The Citizen Police Complaint Commission right here in Long Beach, California. Chances are you haven't heard of it. I'm John Trapper, and as you know, ever since the killing of an innocent man named Doug Zerby, we've been trying to get to the bottom of just what is broken with the Long Beach Police Department. Today we bring you this special feature on this little-known agency designed, in theory, to provide oversight of our police department. We'll hear from 3 different viewpoints on the effectiveness of this organization. We'll be joined in studio by Tomas Gonzalez, a former investigator for the CPCC, and by telephone we'll have the current executive director of the CPCC, along with current chair of the commission, Patrick Thompson. Also in the studio helping us out, we have Dave Willinga, veteran Long Beach journalist and founder of GreaterLongBeach.com. Both interview segments were pre-recorded, and these individuals, who you'll find have seemingly different perceptions of the commission, were not privy to each other's responses. And of course, at the end of this segment, I'll share my thoughts with you. Okay, I have with me Anitra Dempsey and also Patrick Thompson.
Correct.
Okay, who is the chair of the CPCC. And then Anitra is actually the executive director. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you, John.
Well, thank you.
The first question I have for you is, when I went through the charter and the bylaws, I don't actually see the position of executive director in there. So how did that come about?
I think the charter says, and I'm not looking at it right now, so bear with me, but it references staff, or the CPCC, the city manager has the authority to designate staff. And through that, in the beginning, there has always been an executive director, investigators, and administrative support.
And what's your background, Anitra?
The short version is that I've worked for the city of Long Beach for, maybe 21 years. I worked as a civilian within the police department, working assignments such as community policing, and my last assignments were in the chief's office, again, as a civilian. I left the police department and came over to the city manager's office as an investigator for the CPCC. I had the privilege of being the city's first human dignity officer, where I worked to support the human dignity ordinance that stated everyone had the right to live with dignity and respect. And for the past approximate 3 years, I've been the director of the CPCC. Sure, the CPCC was established in 1990 after a high-profile incident here in the city of Long Beach, where use of force was recorded and played pretty much across the nation. The effects were significant, and long story short, the CPCC, our city charter, was changed to authorize an independent review of allegations of police misconduct. So the purpose of the CPCC, again, is to provide an independent, impartial review of allegations of police misconduct, with emphasis on excessive force, false arrest, and complaints of racial or sexual overtones. It's important to note that we are neither advocates for nor against the police. We are objective, impartial fact finders. The Commission reviews approximately 20 categories of misconduct, including discourtesy, improper arrest, profanity, intimidation, misuse of authority, and gender bias. Collectively, the Commission is comprised of 11 commissioners who live in the city of Long Beach and are broadly representative of the racial, ethnic, religious, age, gender, sexual orientation, and disabled members of the general public.
Okay, let me jump in right there. And I'm here with Dave Willinga, who is one of the top investigative journalists in Long Beach, formerly of the Press-Telegram, currently with GreaterLongBeach.com. In fact, that's his. So we have a guest in studio today. His name is Tomas Gonzalez, and he is a former investigator for the CPCC. So I'm going to start right off by asking Tomas, what, in your view, is the CPCC supposed to be?
The Citizen Police Complaint Commission is the commission itself is a group of individuals who have oversight of the police department, and the authority comes from a city charter amendment that was voted on by the people of Long Beach in 1990, and which created this commission. so that they could look at complaints from people, especially with use of force and those kind of things. And so that's what they're supposed to do. And originally, let me give you a little bit of history here. 1992 was really the first year that the commissioners put out a annual report in 1992, which explains very succinctly what their job was and how they were going to go about doing it. And needless to say, the commissioners took it very, very seriously. Among them were attorneys and other community activists, and so they laid out a plan and how they were going to look at complaints and how they were going to divide them up and how they're going to send them back to the police department for investigation. And in those days, the commission told their staff persons, who were a couple of investigators, to go out and investigate certain things. Well, by 2000, the situation had changed. I wasn't there, so I don't know how exactly it changed, but on paper, there was a transition. It's as if the commission went into a tunnel and came out in 2000, and instead of them having the authority to do these things, it now transitioned to the executive director or a staff person who is under the authority of the city manager. And so you had a commission and you had the city staff basically telling the commission what to do. The commission became more of a blue ribbon kind of a situation rather than having the authority and calling the shots for what gets done.
This is Dave Willinga here. There was a lot of publicity when this Citizens Police Complaint Commission was created. I know that there was a backlash against a lot of abuses in the 80s. The Press Telegram did a big series on it. So there was a lot of attention on it. Was the change in its format publicized? Was it on the public radar?
What happened was that it apparently was not, because no one has figured it out up until today, has figured out that there's been this transition of power, unlike what the law says. The city charter demands that certain things happen and occur. There has been the transition over to now the bylaws have been changed so repetitiously, I may add, to make the executive director really the figure who determines what happens and how it happens. And so that to answer your question, no, it's not been on the radar.
Was there a reason given for the change, or was it even announced at the time, or how did you discover it had been changed?
Well, the reason why, okay, your question is no, it wasn't publicized, and not anybody knew about it. I mean, the transition happened, but no one knew about it. And let me explain this a little bit. And the organization, each commissioner is on for 2 years, and they can be there for two times around. So there's 4 years that a commissioner is on. So after, let's say, in 1992, where the commissioners were on for 4 years, by 1996 there were no more commissioners that were the original commissioners who had an original approach. So then things began to transition with that first administration that was different, and there was no institutional history. There was no one there that knew what the original commissioners had designed, and so little by little it began to slip away. And like I say, by 2000, you had some folks who I would say were aware of what they were doing, and who slipped it through under the radar. But I came on in 1999, so I was just beginning, and the change had already been made, so I didn't know about the institutional history.
Patrick?
Yes.
You're there. So you were appointed, you're from District 8, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you were appointed by Ray Gablick?
Correct.
Okay. And what's your background?
Well, I've been a resident of the city of Long Beach for over 10 years. And as far as my relative experience, I've been an employee with the city of Los Angeles for over 15 years. And I've worked various details within the city.
In law enforcement?
In law enforcement, correct. Okay. I'm a civilian in law enforcement, that is.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Sure. Well, I've worked in LBPD's jails for about 13 years. I left as a supervisor when I worked in the jails. And right now my current assignment is in the Scientific Investigation Division, where I am a latent forensic print specialist, that is. A forensic print specialist, and basically we go out to the crime scenes and collect the latent prints from crime scenes.
Oh, interesting.
I also work with the City of L.A. Recreation into Parks as a park patrol officer, and basically you patrol the city parks and just make sure everything's going okay.
You alluded a little bit to the change, the 4 years in commissioners. Well, let me go back to you. You mentioned how that people got there, that their commissioners are appointed, and these are appointed in city council districts by city council people. Do you? I get from you that there's potentially some politicking in there. Are they like a lot of appointments? Are they political rewards for campaigning, things like that? I mean, what do you think of the commissioners that you have known to be on that board and are currently serve?
Well, okay, this is going to be my opinion, and my opinion is that it's been a totally the whole idea of commissioners and being individuals who have knowledge of what's going on in the community, et cetera, expertise. That's just no longer the case. We have folks who are nominated by the council person, you're right, as maybe a political favor, something to that extent. But also, we have the issue of the POA, the Police Officers Association, which is terribly involved in city politics and is terribly involved with the selection process by virtue of them giving money through their PAC to council persons, and this is the price that they control the commission, and in my opinion, that's what's going on. There are police officers on the commission, or maybe not now, but in the past, certainly there have been many officers who have been on there, and there have been wives of officers, and there have been family members whose commissioner may have we had one commissioner that her mother and father were both police officers. So this conflict is constantly there, and it makes a joke out of the whole process.
This tendency toward appointments of people who make governmental policy seems to be on the increase in Long Beach. I mean, you see this on the Planning Commission and the Redevelopment Agency. And also the same thing has to do with the staff controls the information that these people get as well. But in the case of the Citizens Police Complaint Commission, what has been the result of this? How has life in Long Beach changed now that citizens don't really have control of this commission? Could I ask you, and I hate to break in, but
okay,
in terms of, maybe you could think of a couple of examples of instances where that a terrible thing happened, or that the lack of civilian oversight of the police made a drastic difference in people's lives, and how it does.
Okay, I'm going to have to. I'm going to go to a case that it was well publicized. It was in the newspaper for quite a while, and it was a police shooting, OIS as they're known as, officer involved shooting. that had to do with a female, Marcella Bird, who was had a disability. So she was shot, and there was an investigation on it, and the investigation, it was very, very controversial. We wound up. I was on the commission at that time as a staff person, and we wound up in City Hall, at the City Hall chambers. There was a meeting there, and it was attended by only maybe 25 or 30 community activists and the commission. Now, they requested a hearing. Now, if you go to the law or the city charter, it says one of the main powers of the CPCC is to have open hearings on issues of controversy, and together with that, they have the right to subpoena. They have all the full rights of a regular kind of a tribunal. They refused to have a hearing, although they were asked in that community meeting by individuals like Reverend Turner, activists in our black community, by Jim Stearns, who I know you all are familiar with. He's passed away since. Who demanded, and other people demanded, that they exercise this.
Okay, thank you for asking about hearings. That's one of the most misunderstood aspects of the CPCC. The purpose of a hearing is to obtain additional reliable information regarding specific allegations of misconduct. So if after receiving IA's finding, the commission wanted and needed additional information, it could opt to have a hearing, and that is either in the interest of time. There's so many witnesses that need to be called in. The commission could call in those witnesses to obtain information related to specific allegations of misconduct. To date, the commission has not had a hearing for a couple of reasons. One is the packages that we receive pertaining to the allegations of misconduct have been either sufficient, or that's where staff comes in. Staff, if we find out that a witness wasn't interviewed, or if we have questions about information, staff routinely re-interviews, contacts witnesses, and provides a supplement to the package that we receive, so that when the commissioners get the cases, they have the full package. The other thing about a hearing is that if the commission did have a hearing, it would not be open to the public, because, again, it would be discussing specific personnel matters, so it would have to be conducted in closed session. I've heard it suggested in the past that because there hasn't, people equate hearing with, let's find out what's going on about general public concern. And that's a misconception, because as people think that we should be calling the community together to ask them how they feel about things, then we're already viewed as not fulfilling our duties. That's a misconception. We're precluded from doing that. Hearings are specific to obtaining information about allegations of misconduct.
So, yeah, I'm not suggesting they're public hearings, but have there been hearings at all?
There have been no hearings.
Well, look at the city. I mean, the CPCC, since it's coming into origin, since it's becoming a commission, has never, ever had a hearing, has never, ever exercised this. And I think it's because it's an issue of control again. It will fall out of the control. It's in danger of falling out of that control that the city maintains on these issues. And a couple of the commissioners, it's interesting, who were there in that meeting and who didn't speak up, and they're now transitioned. They're on the RDA board. They just were channeled, because of the work that they did for them on the CPCC. And it's my opinion that the hearing would include swearing in, would include witnesses, it would include an open forum where the public sits in And I think that's the reason why they have never had this, because again, the public would see how they manipulate the situations. The staff does anyway, in my opinion.
Well, as for the aspect of the public, don't you think what we would hear from them directly is that because they are HR matters with the LBPD affecting their employment?
Well, I think that's still that was something that Shannon determined or at least brought up the question back in 1989. And I think that there's been some transition in law, and I think they need to revisit that without giving the same old answer and why they don't want to do it. I think it needs to be brought into the present rather than dealing with things that happened in the 90s.
So you're saying that originally the CPCC gave actual control or actual review powers to real citizens over police alleged misconduct. And then the rules were changed so that ultimately city staff or the city manager made that decision. What has been the effect in Long Beach, just in day-to-day police operations and its effect on the citizens of Long Beach of this change?
Now, with the turning on its head, it's the executive director through the city manager who makes that determination on what will be investigated. And so what the result of that is that the police no longer fear and being investigated. They do things. For example, officers now just walk into people's homes, and they can do it at midnight, 2 a.m, just invade people's homes and say that, well, your son is on probation, and we have the right to come in whenever we want to, however we want to, and it's a real terrible situation for families, especially for mothers who are obviously in their nightgowns, and the children. Older folks are scandalized by this. Police officers are going down the street, telling people to get off the street. They have stopped people who are unloading groceries from their car and asking them for their ID and driver's license, etc., and in several cases have towed their cars away. So there's a real fear out there in the community about what's going on, and the reason is that because they control everything, the police, state, if I may, people cannot file complaints because, first of all, the sergeant at the desk will start arguing with them about who do you want to complain about? What do you want to complain about? What do you mean? What CPCC are you talking about? What complaint forms, et cetera, and it's become a real scandal.
Is there a value to the people in power that to have the police behave this way? I mean, for example, I can't imagine that just for the purpose of being able to set people free to behave how they want, that really, I mean, the politicians lose control too then. So to what advantage is this change to the people who are appointing commissioners, to the how does this in any way benefit them?
Okay, in my opinion, the reason is clear. They wish to in the case of let's say the first district, city council district, they did this kind of stuff and wound up moving the whole population out of there to put up these condos. So they used this as a way to instill fear in the hearts and minds of the people that they're patrolling. And another, I think, important thing is, I'm talking about the reason why this is happening. You know, we have a military coming from Baghdad who transitioned into the police force, and now are walking our streets acting as if it's Baghdad. That's the real truth there.
Right. So, but back to what Dave had asked. So there, it's almost sounds like it's conspiracy level, though, when you get to the point where you're saying in the first district, and that was just an example, you weren't stating that, but it's a possibility that, the police are helping to clean up a neighborhood. How would that work? Who actually would be pulling the strings on that type of a scenario?
Well, John, I'm not privy to all of the the stuff that's going on, especially politically behind the scenes.
Who gets credit for that? Like, who making it happen? So is it at the city council level? Is it at the mayor's level? Is it a conspiracy between a whole group of people who are trying to achieve political power, if that's in fact what's going on?
Well, I think it's more economic. I think it's more, and it just so happens that the people on the bottom of the economic rung are the ones that are being affected by the way that this is occurring. The city, I think the police force, what happened on the west side of the city, on the east side of the city. That happened because there's no oversight, and the police just can do whatever they want to do, and it leaked there. But it's happening constantly on the west side. That's the tip of the iceberg on the east side, but it's really the iceberg on the west side. And folks just don't have an opportunity to really feel good about a police presence in their community that is constantly causing them problems financially, emotionally, in terms of their families. It's a big story, John. It's a big case of a lot of things going on that are really bad for Long Beach.
As a person who has been an investigator for much of your career, a federal investigator before you became a part of the CPCC, you must have experienced, I think just about like in every business, there's the on stage and there's the backstage. At a restaurant, people make jokes about how they may be preparing the food. In hospitals, there are always kind of certain convenient corner cutting. But at what point did this corner cutting reach a stage where it actually began to shock you or make you appalled that you sound as though you are?
I can say that the first years that I was there, I met some very fine people. I was doing my job, very satisfied at the ability to do it. But there came a time, probably 2 years before I was shown the door, that I started to see and realize, first of all, that the commission had more authority, the commissioners, than they were exercising. And this happened when I started reading the charter and piecing things together, and I, as a result of my work investigating, in my opinion, the POA was not happy with what we were doing or what I was doing. And they started putting pressure on people around me to keep me from doing my job. There are things that occurred that just made me want to ask why, and I started complaining. The complaints were not taken seriously, or they were handled that way. I sent a letter to the city manager with copies to the deputy manager, and it is my understanding that the commissioners even saw it, and the letter contained my feelings about what was going on in CPCC. and it was not received well. And again, I was isolated, and things like that began to happen to me.
So what were the contents of the letter? What specifically did the letter say? Obviously paraphrasing because you don't have it with you, but
right. The letter said that it complained about the connection between the Police Officers Association, the POA, and the Commission. I also pointed out that the investigations were a sham and a charade, that the commissioners or the commission investigators were scanning the internal affairs reports of investigation rather than doing an independent investigation. They were just scanning them and putting their names on them and giving them to the commission as if they were objective, but they weren't. In other words, it was the internal affairs that was selecting what complaints the commission had, rather than the other way around, which is the intention for the commission.
And one of the questions I have on that is one of our blog posters had actually said that internal affairs investigators serve in that position for a tour of 1 year, and then are returned to other positions, sometimes even just street patrol again after that. Is that true?
Yes, and that has been a criticism for quite a while that I have heard. I don't know if it's been publicized, but the officers they are drafted into the internal affairs for a 1 year stint, and then after which time they are reassigned out in the community. So it would be, it's if you're investigating the guy who's going to be sitting with you, possibly in a life-threatening situation, then you're not going to be so thorough. So yes, what it's true. Doing.
And yet, with the transfer of power from citizens to city staff, and with the police now realizing that they don't stand much of a chance of having a really thorough investigation, does yet the city can still point to the presence of a Citizens Police Complaint Commission if people say that there is no oversight.
Yes, it's true, and it serves their purposes. If you recall, or I don't know if you recall, but back in the day when it was being established, there was much complaining by the police force, the people in power at that time, that they didn't want somebody looking over the shoulder of police officers. Well, in the end, they regrouped and they decided, well, yeah, we're gonna cooperate. However, I believe, in my opinion, that the plan was always in effect to usurp the authority and to turn it around and to begin to use it as in their favor. Now they say, the police, if you listen to them, they'll say, oh yeah, we really like the Citizen Police Complaint Commission. We work hand in hand with them. Well, that wasn't always the case. As a matter of fact, it wasn't the case when I was there in 2006.
Right, and it would seem that they would not be organizations that work hand in hand. It would seem like they would have to be adversaries for it to work to some degree. Almost like the spirit of friendly competition, or
right.
And bad metaphor maybe, but it's how can they not have an adverse relationship and have it work?
Right. If again, being oversight means that you're going to look at what they're doing, and then you're going to at certain points criticize it and ask them to change maybe policy or have some input. And I don't think they were very happy with that.
We've been speaking in such general terms about city staff and about police officers, and yet, much like yourself, when you joined or became a member of this CPCC, you had some very honorable intentions, and I have to imagine that there are many police officers who aren't particularly happy with the arrangement and have to kind of suffer in silence, and who might be better served if there was stronger citizen review? I mean, do you have any compassion for people who are doing an honorable job, and perhaps it's even the majority, I don't know, and yet are kind of as trapped as anybody else?
Yes, I that's very important to understand. There, some of the greatest human beings that I ever met are police officers, and I worked with them personally, and I know that they may feel trapped in that situation. It all comes down from the top. It's the manner in which the chief of police, for instance, in this case, Batts at that time, in my opinion, put everything together for his own purposes. He was always trying to limit complaints because he was always issuing reports to the city saying what a great job he was doing because complaints were down in certain parts of the city. What they didn't tell you was that they were denying people the right to file complaints, and they were using different methods of being in the community, different methods of handling situations, and including in internal affairs. Let me give you a quick example. One of the ways that taking a complaint in the field is supposed to happen is that if a citizen wants to talk to a supervisor or somebody, if a police officer is giving them not a ticket, but is rousting them or doing something disrespecting, whatever it is, they can ask for a supervisor where they're supposed to be. Well, either they won't, they'll say no, supervisor not available, etc., so they won't have one come out. Or let's say a supervisor does show up, I'm usually a sergeant, and when they take the complaint, they fill out the complaint right there on the spot. They'll write in a couple of sentences. They'll tell the citizen, well, you'll have an opportunity to do more on this. Just sign this. The citizen will sign it, and it'll come forward, and then later on they'll try to add other things that weren't in there that they wanted in there, and the rule is, hey, if you sign it, once you sign it, it's over. You can't add anything. So it's a way of, these are administrative ways of keeping complaints down and keeping people from filing complaints.
Okay, and so we don't know how many complaints there are today, but do you think that the same thing would be happening under the current chief of police?
Well, I haven't worked there since 2006.
But I'm sure you hear rumors and that type of thing.
Let me tell you this, that I think average number of complaints that came to CPCC in the years I was there is right around 400. I understand that they're down to 250. So, that is an indicator to me that it's broke. That people still are either don't know about the CPCC, and that's, one of the things we used to do is go out and try to advertise the existence, or that they're being blocked from coming forward.
Yeah, I would tend to have to agree with you and say that that doesn't seem like a reasonable equation to me, that in a city of 500,000 people, there are only 400. And that's not even saying they're valid, which we'll get into in a minute. That's saying that 400 complaints total come into the organization. That seems far-fetched.
Right. That's from all sources, by the way. That's internal affairs complaints. That's CPCC direct complaints. That's complaints from city council persons. From wherever the complaint, is issued, and the total is 400 a year.
We investigate all complaints that we receive.
Okay, the entire commission?
No, the commission sees a percentage of the cases that are brought into the CPCC office.
And how is that determined?
It's not an absolute scientific formula, but the best way is to say that if you look at the charter, it says emphasis on certain allegations of police misconduct. that being use of force, false arrest, complaints of racial or sexual overtones. And we certainly consider that for what the Commission sees. If it falls specifically within the Charter, the Commission absolutely sees that. There are some complaints that on its face are easier resolved, and just in the interest of time for the Commission, the bylaws have been changed to allow staff to have the final disposition on that. It's important to share as well that the Commission does receive reports on what we call our no further action reports.
So there would be a list of at least just the complaint sort of in a list format and say that we're not taking any further action for this reason, or like more of a summary provided by the executive director, or?
Yeah, that's safe to say. It's not really a list with saying that, these are the reasons. If someone disagrees with the NFA findings, we brief the Commission on that and give them the opportunity of rendering a finding on the case. So even though staff may recommend a final disposition, there is an opportunity to appeal that before the full Commission, and we exercise that often. We have a part-time investigator, and we have work that needs to be done. So I'm certainly qualified and available to conduct investigations as well.
Okay, and your investigator then is Tony Dannon?
We have Tony Dannon, and we have James Peary as well.
Okay, and I know Tony is a former Long Beach police officer?
Oh, no. That we would not have anyone, we could not have anyone who has a Long Beach background in law enforcement as part of the Commission staff. Let me add something, John. In regards to the background of our investigators, the CPCC has definitely had investigators who have law enforcement backgrounds, specifically sworn or others, or in general investigator background. So we've had investigators who've not been with municipal law enforcement agencies, but maybe with a federal agency or other places.
But one of the other complaints the reason I asked for the commissioners' backgrounds is because one of the other complaints that we got was most of the commissioners have some sort of a law enforcement background or connection.
I don't know about connection. I can absolutely say not background. I can absolutely say that most of the commissioners do not have a law enforcement background, and thus training becomes really important for the work that they do. I don't know what connection would mean. I think Long Beach is a big city, small town, so it's certainly possible that people know people, but to infer that because they know people they would not be able to perform their duties is not accurate. I think that they come to the table, and then on our end, staff has a responsibility of making sure that the process is pure. We recognize that the meat of the work that we do is in closed session. So people will never see, unfortunately, the unfortunate reality of the work of the CPCC is that people will never see the passionate discussion that goes on in closed session. And again, I thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to share what we do and hopefully to put faces, and I'm glad that you asked about the background, to what we do, because otherwise we're just this generic blob that may or may not serve the community, and we think we do, but we recognize it's always important for us to tell what we do and how we do it. I can assure you just the background, the names, there have been a few people, I can't even think of law enforcement background. I can think of two people in the past 4 years that perhaps would be considered to have had a law enforcement background. One is Patrick, our chair right here, because he worked as a civilian for the Los Angeles Police Department. We also had another civilian Los Angeles Police Department employee who has since termed out. Other than those two, I can't think of anyone else that had a specific law connection to law enforcement in their career.
Patrick, this next one is for you, and I have to be careful because Anitra was close enough to hit you. So,
Go ahead. She'll say ouch for you.
So Anitra, she answers to the city manager, parallel to the chief of police.
We both answer to the city manager.
Okay, so you both do. So you and the chief of police are answering to the city manager.
Correct.
Patrick, you are comfortable that Anitra is coming to you with stuff that is not tainted by that closeness?
Yeah, I see the chief perhaps once a week if either of us attend the weekly department head meeting. I communicate more regularly with the commander in internal affairs, and that's more to go back and forth and get information pertaining to to any cases that we're looking at.
How do you think the chief feels about the CPCC?
I think, and this is me guessing, but I think that he respects the work that we do. I've heard people say, as you stated, that the commission has a lot of authority. I think I can assure you that we do not for lack of a better word, talk about what we're going to share to the city manager. I am required to, and easily do without any reservations, submit to the city manager exactly what the commission says. And similarly, we submit what Internal Affairs has as well. And if there's a conflict, then the city manager works that out with the chief.
Right.
Well, no, I think that the difference between what we do is we are required to and absolutely do take all complaints that are brought to our attention. If someone calls, for example, because they're having a dispute with their neighbor, and I'm giving you a hypothetical without getting to any facts that we've actually seen, because, as you know, I can't discuss specific cases. So as best as I can give you an example, if someone calls about a neighbor dispute that is unresolved for a variety of reasons, and their concern is not necessarily with the actions of the police officer, but they keep calling us back, we will document each time because it's important. What we listen for is, are there any new concerns? Are there concerns that we need to move forward and investigate? But I err on the side of documenting contacts. I do not want it to be subjective to where any of us goes, well, this is what I heard, and I decided not to do anything else with it. I hope that by documenting contacts that we are providing more enhanced community service, because you're right. If someone is not, and the question is not, are they dissatisfied with the findings? The question is, do they continue to have a problem that is unresolved, whereby the CPCC has the authority to address it? There's an appeal process for the NFAs, and that's communicated in writing to all of the complainants, advising them that they can appeal the findings before the full commission. If the full body hears the case, there is not an appeal process for those findings because it's far more intense. But at any time that someone has concern, either about what officers or police personnel have done or about our processes, I encourage them to address the full commission, because it does provide that checks and balances. You asked Patrick a question earlier, and I'm not sure if he ever answered it, but the commission needs to know that when they have questions about what we do, be it directly from us or from community members, that's what they're there for, is to hear from people.
Yeah, how often do you guys meet?
We meet once a month, the second Thursday of every month.
Okay, so you all have full-time jobs. This is something you do, or you maybe not, but I mean, this is just something you do as a community service.
Correct.
Right, it's a non-paying. Okay, so one of the other things I found on a blog post is the effect of, I stopped into a police department. I attempted to file a complaint, and the officer did everything he could to discourage me. Finally, I demanded the form. I
think that citizens absolutely have the right to file a complaint. They shouldn't have to use magic words. And I believe both the CPCC and the police department know that someone should get a form. And the forms are available in all of the lobbies of the police station. And so minimally, if an officer or sergeant is not available to come out and personally interview them, there's a form that should be accessible to them so that they can fill out the form and leave it there or bring it over here. And lastly, the CPCC has conducted in the past audits of the lobby areas to ensure that those forms are up to date and available.
Could I get you to commit to me on air today that you'll put one online?
I would love to. And it's only technological challenges that keep us from doing that. But I can absolutely commit to you that I will explore every possibility. We've looked at that before. I think right now what we can do is email it, but the form that you get it in is where you'd have to print it out. You can't go into the fields and enter information. So we've definitely talked about having a form where people can fill it out at that time and push submit, and we get it.
Yeah, because the process of filling it out or walking into a police department to pick it up is extremely intimidating.
Right.
And I think probably
that's why we're here, though, as well. By charter, we can't be in any building where police services exist. And it's because I think the authors of the charter recognize that if people already have an issue with the police, they're probably not going to want to go to them. So we're another alternative, and we're in City Hall on the 13th floor. We recognize, though, that it's not always convenient for people to take off from work or do whatever. So we try to make it accommodating to them, including the form. Now, the form is semantics.
How about officer-involved shootings? Do you do a lot of those, or are those quickly passed on to other agencies?
See, for all of the complaints that the CPCC receives, they're just that, complaints. So we see officer-involved shootings when a complaint has been filed.
You do?
Yes, we do.
You investigate. Now, I know we can't get into it.
Generally what happens, again, someone will have filed a complaint that, and generally officer-involved shootings, the allegation is use of force. We, in all cases, the CPCC, whether or not the complaint is initiated directly here or with PD, if we take it, we'll write up the summary. We'll do as much investigating as we can. We then send it over to Internal Affairs. They'll pick it up. They interview the officers. They'll get all of, the technical things such as the calls for service, photos. We get it back. We take another look at it, and then we'll either submit it to the commission or render a finding in general. So officer-involved shootings follow the same format. The only added component is that generally the DA's office is involved, the coroner's office may be involved, and those reports, those things have to take place before we see it. So when we get the case, it is always after all of those other processes have taken place.
I'm going to ask the question. You probably can't answer it, but with regard to, say, the Zerby shooting, right now you don't have that, even though somebody probably would like to file one, but you wouldn't be allowed to touch that right now because there are so many aspects of that investigation that are still undone. So it just hypothetically, if you did have a complaint, you would not be able to be touching it right now.
If we had a complaint, we wouldn't have it right now, correct? Because we look at it when it's final. So what we would get back from any complaint, including officer-involved shootings, are all the witness statements and forensics, a variety of things that will go to the allegation, whatever the allegation is. And generally for an officer-involved shooting, the allegation would be excessive use of force.
Now, I would hope I would be able to go and I would get myself a report today of officer-involved shootings in Long Beach over the past year, and I would be able to find that you guys had every one of those as a complaint. You
probably would not, in fact, because I know, again, we only look into cases when a complaint has been filed. And we don't wordsmith it, but the reality is many times people share their concerns, opinions, and perceptions with others, but don't contact us or the police department. So it is absolutely likely that there have been shootings in the city of Long Beach that the commission has not seen.
Now, who would be eligible to file a complaint about an officer-involved shooting? Any citizen, or would it have to be somebody who witnessed the event?
I think the language I'm not sure if it's the charter or the bylaws, policies, or procedures, but the short answer is that anyone can file a complaint. Now, we just had a complaint. We do take anonymous complaints. It is certainly helpful that someone who has contacted us has information that would support their suspicion that there was misconduct, either speaking directly with a witness or someone, because that's what we're charged to do. And if someone believes that, well, I just think it was wrong because I didn't like the way it sounds, we'll absolutely look into it. But again, we're to be fact finders, so it helps us to be able to go out and find people that saw or knew or perceived. We've had people call and say, I was watching the news and I didn't like what I saw and I want to file a complaint. And we absolutely take it and process it. If that's what they believe, we again try to see if there's anything else that would support their suspicion that there was misconduct.
But you don't think that an officer-involved shooting that's being investigated by sort of the same branch of government, that being some type of law enforcement, you don't think an outside body of some type should be investigating all of those?
I think the only thing that we can do is what the charter allows us to do. and it's very simple. The charter requires that we have a complaint filed. It does not mean that as individuals, the commissioners are not concerned about what happened. We always caution them to keep in mind that it's possible that they may see facts later on as a complaint, but in the meantime, for any cases that, particularly cases that receive a lot of publicity, the commissioners live in the same community where people are talking about what happened, so it's hard to close your eyes to sentiments. What they're required to do by charter is to look at cases where complaints have been filed.
If we had an organization in town that just every time they saw an officer-involved shooting, they filed a complaint on behalf of that organization and its members who cared, that they thought that maybe officer-involved shootings had become a little excessive here in Long Beach, would then the commission investigate those complaints?
Absolutely. The commissioners do not see an officer's complaint history. Staff does. And so if and Internal Affairs looks for that as well. But in general, if there's a concern that over the past year or the past 2 years, the numbers of officer-involved shootings have increased, the commission can look at specific complaints. We wouldn't want to leave it there, though. We would minimally share those concerns with the police department as well.
Okay. I'm just going to go through each one, and if you can, just give me an example of something that would fit into that disposition.
Okay.
Okay, so if something is unfounded, what's a good example of that?
Unfounded means that it simply did not happen. So if, for example, someone alleges that Officer Smith used excessive force on the corner of Long Beach Boulevard in Anaheim while he was receiving a traffic violation. We take the complaint, we're looking in, the complainant may specifically say what happened, and we are able to pull video and view the contact and see that the complainant never got out of the car, the officer never touched them. The allegation of excessive force would be unfounded. It didn't happen. So there absolutely could be witnesses. In all cases, we're hoping for independent witnesses, or independent witnesses or evidence pertaining to the allegation. So it could be people, it could be video, it could be audio, it could be whatever is available to look at and determine whether or not the allegation happened.
Okay. So exonerated?
Exonerated means the action of the officers were legal, proper, and necessary under the circumstances. An example of that is maybe a rear twist lock, wrist lock, where someone is ordered out of their vehicle and they're not complying and maybe confrontational, and the officer puts the hand behind the back. And that's a very generic example, but basically if the person is non-compliant and the officer puts the person's hand behind their back, under those very, very limited example, those actions could be viewed as legal, proper, and necessary under the circumstances.
Okay. And when would you not sustain a complaint?
Not sustained is the muddiest one we have. It's when we simply don't know. And oftentimes a great example would be if complainant says that the officer used profanity, and the officer says, no, I didn't, and there are no independent witnesses. There's nothing in either of their background or character per se that says that one is more credible than other in that specific example. The commission in that case would have to find not sustained, barring any other information.
How about something that's sustained?
Sustained is when the allegation is found to be true, and that could be using an example of use of force again. A complainant could allege that the officer used excessive force, and we may be able to obtain video, witness statements, or other things and look at it and say, yeah, that force was excessive.
Out of these categories, how often, are there percentages that you have available, or?
Our stats are on the website, and I don't have them memorized, and we don't have the stats for 10 yet. But it's important, when it comes to the finding categories, it's important to say that our goal is not to have a higher percentage of sustained than not sustained, for example. Our goal is not to have any particular category of finding. Our goal is to, when complaints are brought to our attention, to have the best investigation that we can and to have the best finding. So the commissioners they're people, as our staff, who want to go home at the end of the day and rest their head and know that they've done the best job. And sometimes the best finding is exonerated. Sometimes the best finding is sustained. Sometimes the best finding is unfounded.
Let's look at that for a second. So you said you want to do the best investigation possible.
Absolutely.
How many complaints do you get a year?
Ooh, I think the numbers have been decreasing over the past year, and I'm going to guess right now that last year we probably ended with approximately 250 or so.
Okay, and you have 3 investigators, yourself and the 2 others.
Right, the 2 others are both available, but they're never here at the same time. I think we're comfortable. I personally would not close out anything that I felt that was half done or partially done. I always look at it, what is the right thing to do, and then also have a Murphy's Law kind of luck. So we have people routinely subpoenaing our documents. And what I wouldn't want is for an attorney to look at our documents and find out we did a poor job or a partial job.
And I'm sure that happens, that you do get subpoenas all the time, right?
Oh, absolutely. And to date, I've not had anyone come back and go, you guys didn't do a good job with this.
Now, some of these complaints that go before the commission, and Patrick, maybe you want to take this for me, is some of those are just internal affairs complaints that are sort of just passed over to you just through the same process. So they don't get any additional investigation first. You're getting what the investigator found who worked with internal affairs, right?
Well, I'm sorry, we want to get Patrick in, but he couldn't answer that for you. The commission doesn't know where the complaint initiated. So they don't know if the complaint started with CPCC or if it started with internal affairs. And they don't know the name of the investigator. Well, they know the name of the person who put the package together, but there could be several investigators or personnel who have interviewed witnesses and things of that sort. So they don't get the specifics of that.
Okay. All right, Patrick, describe to me what you get at these meetings that you have every month. What happens? Take me to the interesting parts from start to finish, typical meeting.
Well, it starts off with an open session, and that's the forum where we allow the public to come and address police-related issues. And so that's always interesting. I look forward to that part as in my role as chair, and I'm sure the other commissioners do, because we're always looking for feedback from the community, and we're always interested in what they have to say. Do
people try and initiate complaints at that portion of the meeting?
Yeah. Yes.
So, and what do you do with those?
Well, we do not. What we do is just absorb all the information. We take it all in, and at that point, the staff will look into it if necessary. Yeah, and it's also an opportunity for people that have filed complaints to come and speak about those complaints. They're aware if on some occasions if we'll be discussing their particular complaint that evening. So it's also an opportunity for them to come forth with additional information that we may consider during closed session. We adjourn the open session and we go into closed session, and as you're aware, we don't really get into details about specifics of those cases, and that's because of human resources, policy and whatnot. But we sit down and we go through an agenda, and sometimes, we do, on numerous occasions, we do more than one case. And we sit down and we just discuss the facts of the case. And everyone has an opportunity to voice their opinion, and come to a conclusion about which of the findings we think are applicable to the situation. So everyone has a voice, and everyone's heard, and we come to a conclusion.
And every case comes in on sort of the same template, like everything looks the same each time, or how does that work for you?
So it's a little vague what you're asking me in terms of.
Is it every time you get a complaint, are you looking at the same piece of paper? just with new information on it, or are you getting one piece of paper that comes from the Internal Affairs Department and one that comes from, is there any way for you to detect whether something's coming through just a general complaint procedure or through an Internal Affairs complaint?
Yeah, there may be.
And again, let me help him out a little bit. The commissioners receive a package mailed to them the week prior to our actual meetings.
Okay.
The cases that are prepared by CPCC staff have the same format. Included on the format that we prepare, which will include the background information, the statements from the involved parties, including the complainants, any witnesses, officer witnesses, and the accused officer. Behind that are attachments, which could include photos, police reports, things of that sort. Again, the Commission does not know what IA's findings are, but it's presumed because of our process that when they have it, that IA has already seen it. If a complaint is initiated with us, we send it over to IA when we get it back, and then we brief it. So IA has always seen what the Commission sees. The Commission, however, does not know IA's findings.
The public perception is of concern because we want to know that the CPCC is definitely a separate body from the police department, especially since we've learned recently that the IAs are returned to, after a year tour of duty with the Internal Affairs Department, they are returned to other duties within the police department.
Well, I'm not sure how long. I think that I'm always cautious from doing one broad brush to define anything.
Well,
there may be some IA investigators who are there for a year. There are absolutely IA investigators who have been there longer. They do get reassigned, and as does our staff. I mean, we have people that, retire and leave. So, but what I can assure you and your audience is that we're absolutely independent. We're required to be independent. The commissioners see a combination of CPCC investigations and IA investigations.
Right, but did you understood where I was?
Well, that's an interesting perspective, and that's an area that Patrick could probably share his opinion, because it's very subjective, quite honestly. My short answer is that I think that what we're relying upon or hoping for is the professional integrity of people when they receive their assignments. And then that's the benefit of the CPCC, is that we provide that checks and balance. So even if Investigator Smith didn't want to uncover evidence, that's where we take the independent look at the information we receive.
And I can assure you that, remember, we are civilians, and we also are part of the community, so everyone is looking out for the community concerns. And, also, we've got some pretty savvy people that have been a part of the CPCC. I mean, our makeup, remember, we come from all kind of professional backgrounds. In the past, we've had lawyers, we've had council members, we've had people that have been city managers. So you've got a wide array of knowledge, and I think that we're savvy enough to be able to detect any issues that may arise.
Right. Well, I think police community dialogues are certainly useful, and while the CPCC has a specific purpose and format for the way we conduct business, we also, in the past, have had community dialogues on a community forum on use of force, and even if we're not the ones sponsoring those, we share information about other forums, such as the California Conference for Equality and Justice recently, I think last Wednesday, had a police community dialogue, and I believe it's part of an ongoing series where community members and members of law enforcement, specifically the Long Beach Police Department, can go out and have discussion about concerns. And so there are other resources within the community that could help that area.
You'll find on the opposite side, I would imagine, that people might point to the drastic reduction in crime statistics in the city. And, I mean, is that a legitimate defense of, are we getting the results we want, or?
Well, look at in my opinion, situation is up in the air. I see with the gamesmanship that's going on with regard to complaints and investigations, and I just can't help but be concerned that maybe we're not getting all of the information, and it's not being presented to the citizens of Long Beach, and this is geared towards things like getting credit for something, and I just would be very suspicious of numbers until we had an audit. We need to have an audit.
Right. I'm trying not to show a bias in this interview, but I will tell you, I could find more than 250 complaints on this campus in an hour against the Long Beach Police. Just in conversations with my students on an ongoing basis. So this is a real ruse that they have going on with the CPCC. It's and if you go to their website, you'll find all the information. It looks very promising, and you feel like, wow, this is great that this exists. Then there's not even an application online.
Right, and there was an audit done back in, I believe it was 2002, by the county grand jury, and I think one of the findings that they had there was that they needed to make that complaint form more available to the community. It's occurred now that we don't even have it online like they used to in the old days. I just don't understand. Also, I think a particular importance here is for the community to know that in the old days, for throughout the year, maybe we would, in one year we had 121 complaints that went on front of the commission. Okay, I believe that was 2002. But I understand that in this past year, they had a total of 20 complaints that went on front of the commission.
Okay, and right after this break, we're going to talk a little bit about that process and how one gets to the commission, and maybe what a disposition of a complaint once it's been with the commission. But that'll be right after this.
This number, 20 complaints for an entire year, kind of stands out, I guess, in a way that it really does. It's hardly visible, but it stands out in its invisibility. How in a city of 500,000 people are only 20 of them filing a complaint it just seems like in the course of people bumping into each other that there would be more than that.
Well, I agree with you, and I can't tell you the reason why there are only 20. I just know that when I was there, we had as many as 120, and I believe when I left, we had something like 60 or thereabouts. It's shrunk, and it's really the way that they would like things. They meaning the city persons, the city manager, in my opinion, and also the city attorney, in my opinion. And other high-ranking officials want to, continue the charade that we're fine, we're healthy, everything's running well, and the truth of the matter is, it's not running well at all, and that everyone's suffering because of it. Because if the police had someone looking over their shoulder, really bona fide oversight, they would not be, in my estimation, involved in so many issues with regard to use of force.
And yet they can point to the CPCC's figures as evidence that things are okay.
Well, part of the problem, David, is, and I think the problem is that those annual reports with that information, who would have known how many complaints there are, unless we're talking about it here on this program, but they're not published. They're online, very they're almost surreptitious. they're online. You got to go searching for them. No one advertises, and let's be frank here. The city council.
Wait, can you clarify what is online? The complaints are online somewhere?
No, the annual reports.
Oh,
that's what I'm referring to, where the statistics and the information can be found if you dig hard enough. And one of the, let me just.
But even then, those you're saying those are only going to reflect the number of complaints that they've actually logged in.
Well,
so it had to make it. It had to make it to the commission,
right,
and been accepted by the commission in whatever form or fashion.
Correct.
They do that.
Right. However, like I said, you had to dig. However, in that annual report, and it's just in all of them, they misstate the case. They say, we have investigated 400 complaints. And that's not true. What they have done is they have received 400 complaints, but they have not investigated 400 complaints. Look at, they have a part-time investigator, and it used to be. I don't know if it is a full-time now. But I know in 2006 they had a part-time investigator. The executive director considered themselves to be an investigator. They only could do that part-time because they're administering a program. So if they investigated 400 complaints, that would mean they would have to have investigated 200 each working part-time. The full caseload for an investigator in the city of San Francisco, which has a Cadillac Citizen Oversight Commission, the caseload for an investigator is 35 complaints a year. That's a thorough complaint. Okay? Now we find ourselves here, and who would have known? Unless people start asking the questions about what it is, that this is the case. And again, those reports, annual reports, go to city council people who are the real power over the CPCC, supposedly, and who don't take the time to read the reports, apparently, because these figures are there to be had. All you got to do is read the report.
Well, you just touched on what was going to be my next question, I think, which is, okay, so now people know about this problem, but they know that filing a complaint isn't necessarily going to do anything. They know that the city manager and the police chief or whoever are not going to really have welcoming ears here. Where does a group of citizens or a citizen begin to apply the kind of political pressure that could begin to reform this?
Well, that's a great question, and in my opinion, is that people need to first be aware of the problem, and then they need to address it by taking action. With the Citizen Police Complaint Commission, I think communities need to organize into committees.
Since you mentioned city council, maybe bringing it up and as a debate issue. It seems big enough to me to qualify.
That definitely is. But I think you need to put pressure by, telling people, explaining to people they have a right to file a complaint. And as a matter of fact, in this city, it's someone sitting in Peking, China, reading in the newspaper about a use of force issue in Long Beach, can get on the phone and call Long Beach and file that complaint. It can be filed by anyone. Doesn't have to be the person that it's happening to. And it also can be filed anonymously. You don't have to give your name. And that's something that was a big problem in the past when I was there.
Well, at the risk of being a little cynical here, so once a complaint is filed, it still disappears into the same system that has been minimizing the statistics. Is, for example, this original CPCC was formed by citizen outrage.
Yes.
Okay, so isn't the potential for action at the ballot box, like that kind of thing. Pressure on isn't the city council really the place to go where they depend on a certain amount of election day support to stay in power?
This is a real truth of it. You know, let's again be frank about this. The Police Officers Association really pumps money into campaigns and the like, and they become very close to candidates, and then these candidates defend the POA and police activity, etc., strenuously at the city council meetings.
From what I see in my research, I think the POA endorsed all current city council representatives with the exception of 2.
Yes, I can't speak to that. I know specifically that there are city council people who were on the CPCC and transitioned from the CPCC to becoming a city council person. And in my opinion, that is germane. That has everything to do with the decision making that's going on in CPCC, the kind of under the radar type of activity that's going on the CPCC.
Okay, so since you brought this up, I just want to sort of investigate this. The POA is a union, and it is very typical for unions to give money to candidates that serve them. How can we avoid this conflict? I mean, it's just...
You know, my opinion is that in Long Beach, among many, Long Beach has an activist police department and police union. And I remember a while back, there was a case where a business owner was not happy with what was going on. Apparently the police were disrupting his business in the late night hours, and he felt that he was being wronged. So he took out some kind of an ad against the police, pointing out that he was being treated discriminatorily, and the police union picketed his business downtown Long Beach. Who ever heard of that? I mean, you know, talk about power and just, you know, they need to understand they serve the people. It's not the other way around.
I mean, in most cities, it works a little bit differently. The police union endorses a candidate, and the public takes comfort in the fact that the police union has endorsed that candidate, because they say the people who are for the safety of our citizens endorse this candidate, and it's very touchy-feely. In this town, it seems to operate on money, and
it's been reported to me that as many as 100 volunteers from the POA will get out there and walk the precincts on behalf of a particular candidate.
I'm probably asking you to step outside, but I really just want your opinion on this. Do you think that all the police who are within the union walk in step with that idea?
No, I know, in fact, that that's not the case. They have a very, very powerful board, but there are even board members who do not agree with the current head of the POA,
Steve James,
Mr. James, and that Mr. James is, quite a character.
Is an activist.
He's an activist, I think, for the wrong reasons. And it's very interesting. You know, I'm sure that as a result of this show, there are going to be some negatives coming towards you from individuals. But the POA is very organized. They have a group that always respond on their behalf. The reality is there are other council persons who don't agree with the police and what they're doing, and I'm not going to name them, but they just their hands are tied by politics. Very honest. We have some good council people there, and but but there's so much of the backroom politic, right? And so you don't want to be viewed as someone speaking against the status quo.
If you want to answer this question, and you said it's good to have the police on your side, what has your life been like as someone who is speaking out? Are you concerned? Are you afraid? Are you not worried because you are so public? Or is it just...
I am concerned, and I have been concerned since 2006. You know, the police at one point did come to my house and bring me out and put me in handcuffs, and they said that it was because I somehow had a ticket that I hadn't paid. And I told them, look at you guys, I know what you're doing, but I'm still going to continue with this complaint, you know. So, yeah, I feel afraid.
Let's just back up just for fun. Did you have a ticket that you hadn't paid?
No such thing. And my car was parked, you know, down the street, not in front of my house. So, you know, it was ridiculous. And I sent an email to the mayor, to the city council people, reminding them I have this complaint against the city. Why is this going on? Why are you allowing this? And I did get a call back from a commander who apologized and said that it wouldn't happen anymore.
So, Tomas, you really sort of led me to believe that this CPCC is sort of a charade. Would you agree with that characterization? That
unfortunately, I would.
Okay, so how is it a charade?
Well, I mean, it's all a game. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, there is no such thing as an independent investigation, and very few investigations by CPCC investigators. You know, an investigation, a thorough investigation, takes quite a while. It doesn't take 30 days from a part-time investigator to do even one.
So, and I think you alluded during the break to the fact that the internal affairs investigations were being handed off, at least at the time that you were with.
Yes, that became a bone of contention there. That the complaints were coming in from internal affairs. Well, those investigations in the cases where they did do an investigation, the regular process is for the cases to be scanned in CPCC, and that there be some changes done to them, the names changed to include the investigator who's doing the scanning. And then they're put into a format that conforms to the format for CPCC, and then sent forward as a independent investigation to the commission. And the commissioners who are sitting at home, they don't know what's going on. They're receiving a packet with maybe 3 or 4 nowadays complaints, and they read them. They make little marks on there, and then they come back to the meeting and they talk and ask questions. They have the internal affairs head there, the commander, whoever it is, who is there to defend their point of view, the police point of view. There's no one in that meeting for the community. There's no community organization representative there, or the complainant's rep or anything like that. And then they make a determination. It could be sustained or not sustained. It could be, I believe in the year, the average is that 2% of the cases that go in front of them are sustained or next.
So let's take the worst case scenario. A complaint is investigated and the commission finds that it is a sustained complaint based on your investigation, or the comprehensive investigation if there's other portions of it. So they've sustained it. Mm-hmm. What does that mean from that point?
Well, it means that the secretary who's there, he or she will log it in and they log in the findings, and they do it for all of the complaints. But in the case of sustained, they all go. Let me back up. Every complaint goes to the city manager. Every finding goes to the city manager or the assistant city manager, and they review it and they bless it, or they don't. What happens is it's supposed to be a two-pronged investigation of a complaint. The Internal Affairs does theirs, and the CPCC does theirs. They're supposed to come to the city manager independently with a recommended finding. If in those cases where they're not similar, let's say one is sustained and one is not sustained, then they're supposed to have a meeting with the city manager or his representative to discuss a middle ground, or to try to convince the city manager what action to take or not to take. What's very what's curious is that most times the CPCC and the IA, the chiefs, arrived at the very same position. Okay, so that 95% of the time they're agreeing, and especially on the sustained, not sustained cases, which, the obvious observation there, and I know for a fact that there was contact, in my opinion, between the people on that commission, and the executive director, who would know what the outcome of the police investigation was, the internal affairs, and would leak it to the commission members, who would then fight hand and tooth for that to be the final disposition of the commission. And I know that there was one commission I sat on, or I was a staff for, that at least 5 of them had direct contact with the police department as former police officers, as married to police officers, or whose parents were police officers.
And that's 5 out of how many?
11.
Okay, so that's pretty well stacked.
Well, they could make it happen.
Right.
My biggest complaint was no further action complaints. There's a history behind how they were handled in the past and how they're handled now, but without going into that, the complaints that come forward from Internal Affairs, their full investigations, etc. They also send a pack or a stack of NFAs, and one of my duties there was to review the NFAs and to find cases that shouldn't be in that stack. And by the way, before I left, they took that job away from me and gave it to a clerk because they didn't want me looking through them anymore. Because that's really where I was astounded at the level of non-oversight, the level of blatant police abuse or misconduct that was put in there, and with the knowledge of the police chiefs. They have a bureau that looks at them before they come to us, and with the knowledge of the commanders in charge and everybody, but they were trying to sneak them by us. They didn't have to sneak them by us after it was taken away from me, because it was done in the open. They just push them through as NFAs, and they're then sent to the dead. What happens is the Internal Affairs takes maybe 9 months, maybe 10 months to do their investigations, and they do it on purpose because it means that we're only going to have the case for a limited amount of time, and so the opportunity we have to go out there and is really the heat is turned up. The Citizen Police Complaint Commission is now nothing more than a PR firm for the police department. Let me give you an indicator. study the annual reports, and you'll see how they become cheerleaders for the chief of police to
Okay, so there was, during your tenure, there was discipline that occurred because of your investigations. So it is possible for this group to work if it's handled the way its founding documents would expect that it should be handled.
If it followed the city charter and the way it's worded, and if the commissioners were to receive back the authority to determine what investigations they would investigate, and then have the ability to follow those investigations like they did in 1992, it would be fulfilling the wishes of the people of Long Beach.
And Patrick, let's get back to you. Some more fun stuff. Does it get hot in that room?
I'm not that adjective you use. I'm not. I wouldn't describe it as such. Everyone's always respectful and mindful, and we value each other's opinions. So I wouldn't describe it as hot.
I would. They disagree with each other. They're very passionate.
Yeah, see,
we do disagree. We do disagree. We do that. But
any public
I guess what I'm
discourse
saying,
should
it
be
doesn't
hot.
get to the point where there's name calling and whatnot. There are disagreements. You know what I mean?
What are some of the dynamics of these meetings?
Well, if there's a need to adjourn the meeting and discuss a case, we certainly will do that. But for the most part, we get through our stated agenda each meeting. And I don't know if there's a real average as a time spent on each of our cases. It just depends on how much information we have to sort through to come to a decision.
Well, I want to let you guys, is there anything that I haven't talked about that you'd like to get out there? Because I will definitely include it. So if you have something that you would like to say that you think it's important for the public to know.
Right. Well, I absolutely want to thank you, John, for allowing us the opportunity to share what we do. We recognize that we have to continue to educate the community about CPCC as a viable resource. We also have to listen to the concerns, be it real or perceived, about our effectiveness. The commissioners are out in the community, and we also meet on a monthly basis. To learn more about what the CPCC does, one can go to the website at www.longbeach.gov./CPCC. They can call us directly at 562-570-6891. If there's anyone who's interested in being a commissioner or serving on our commission, they can contact our office at either of the sources that I gave, and or contact their council member or the mayor's office. And again, from my perspective as a director, I appreciate hearing the concerns and having the opportunity to respond to them. I believe that the work that we do is very rich and in some cases complex.
All of the people we spoke to seem like well-intended people with integrity and great passion for their city. That said, the CPCC is currently an ineffective organization. When a city of 500,000 people and a reputation like that of the LBPD has only 250 to 400 complaints over the course of 1 year, someone somewhere is being disingenuous. As a law-abiding citizen who has little interaction with the police, I myself have filed one complaint and assisted several students in filing theirs. Is this the result of a sinister plot? That's doubtful. It's simply unreasonable to believe the small staff is able to investigate those that they do get. So how could they possibly entertain the thought of truly reaching out to the people of Long Beach and encouraging citizens to come forward with their complaints? This organization is not a deterrent to police misconduct as it was designed to be. In fact, it is unclear from these folks we interviewed whether the city manager even heeds their recommendations, and no way for the public to know, as they are considered personnel matters. In concept, Ms. Dempsey and Mr. Thompson could do a great deal of good for our city if changes were made to the way they do business. Feedback in the form of complaints needs to be solicited from our citizens. On this day, when the city has broken ground on a new $490 million courthouse, the CPCC and Ms. Dempsey must be provided adequate funding. And Mr. Thompson should be able to see all complaints, and the Commission should determine each of their findings. Once the Commission made a recommendation, there needs to be an independent audit to determine if these recommendations are being implemented or not. Another option would be to place actual complaints with any confidential information concealed so that the public had at least anecdotal evidence of police officers receiving discipline. Were the Commission, as it is described in its own founding documents, utilized, Long Beach police officers could walk proudly through the streets of Long Beach because there would not be a cloud of doubt over their integrity. The money that the city would save in legal fees and settlements by getting rid of the bad apples before it's too late would more than pay for the increase in the CPCC. I'm John Trapper, and this has been a K-Beach special feature.